I have a business moment. There's
Oh,
nothing
okay.
happened this
Oops.
week.
Sorry about that. We already started. Hello and welcome to another edition of Sutton and Back Family Style. I'm Jason.
Bill?
And I hit the record slightly too early as we were still talking off air, but we're back.
Yes. We don't have a business moment this week, but we've got lots of sports. So let's start with hockey because I find myself watching more hockey this year than I've ever watched. And I'm starting to understand a little bit more, and I'm starting to enjoy it a little bit more. But I'm excited about the Lightning advancing, and I'm pessimistic about the Penguins, like we talked about off air. And, at least, the only time I ever root against Pittsburgh team is when it's the Lightning, so now I don't think I'll have to do it this year. I think the Lightning will play in Washington in the next round, unfortunately.
I think sadly. I mean, Pittsburgh has played sloppy pretty much all year. They haven't looked great in the playoffs, especially Matt Murray. And now they'd have to win back-to-back games, including a Game 7 in Washington, which they did last year. But this is just a very different team.
I mean, if it gets down to a Game 7, maybe they'll be in the heads of the Capitals.
Maybe, but Murray's going to have to really step up his game. Because, NHL often comes down to who's the hottest goalie. And Holtby's way outplaying. Matt Murray's been a little shaky all year. He's not looked
he really has.
He has not looked like the guy that, won the cup 2 years ago and last year too. So, but as a Penguins fan, they're coming off back-to-back championships. So, as much as you'd like the 3-peat and the 4-peat and whatever else comes after that, you just, it's nice to let another fan base get the win from time to time.
I don't think it's in the cards.
No.
So who do you think will come out of the West?
I think Winnipeg.
Winnipeg was really good last night.
I think they look fantastic. We talked off air.
Nashville's goalie give up that many goals before.
I know. As we talked off air, I like the players on Las Vegas, but I've become anti-Las Vegas fans just due to the fact that they don't seem to understand hockey or how their team was built. They seem to feel like their GM did all these incredible moves, and really the NHL just gifted them a great team. The protections for everyone else was so hard that, they were able to get second line and even some first line players off, every NHL team. So, plus first round picks, it's hard not to be good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I know it's fun to pretend your team is a scrappy
underdog.
underdog.
The Lightning are my picks, I guess.
Yeah, I would say at this point. I can't see the Capitals.
I'm really hoping the Lightning can win. I'm being so excited. It's so good for Tampa.
The only thing going for Washington is if they get by Pittsburgh, which has just been, their kryptonite, they might feel like they're playing with house money and just forget just a huge burden lifted off them.
Right. Well, let's stay in the playoffs. Let's talk about our newest Marvel superhero, LeBron, because he's been absolutely ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
He's been everything Michael Jordan's done. He's done in this series. 3-game winners.
3-game winners.
And the last one was ridiculous.
And,
go ahead.
We don't know where Kyrie's going to end up long term as far as his, as much. I'm not dissing Jordan whatsoever. He's obviously in the pantheon of greatest players of all time. But the Bulls were a really good team. You had Scottie Pippen, another top 50 all-time player, according to everybody, whether I believe that or not. You always had, it was the old school NBA, and you had 21 feet at center and 18 fouls between Cartwright, Whittington, and Longley. Yep. You had an all-star every year at the 4, whether it was Horace Grant or Dennis Rodman. You always had guys like just good catch and shoot shooters like Craig Elo, Kerr, Kukoc. Then you were always able to bring in, crafty veterans that could, like Ron Harper that could come in and give you a lot of minutes. And I don't think LeBron has ever had a team anywhere near as good as the Bulls. I guess you could argue the Miami Heat team would be.
Miami teams were good.
They were good. I don't know.
Not this Cavaliers team. This Cavaliers team, he's carrying.
Right, and just like he carried.
I've never seen anybody carry a team. I think Jordan carried his last championship team because they weren't that good. The last one.
They weren't as good. They still had, Pippen, Rodman, all those guys.
Yeah, but those guys were coming into their careers. They weren't that good.
No, but
But LeBron this year is superhuman.
Yeah, and the argument against LeBron is always, he's 3-6 in the finals, but he's never missed the finals pretty much. And, besides this team, he's brought players like Boobie Gibson and some others along the way, so it's amazing to watch.
It's totally amazing. Just when I think he can't make a more spectacular shot or do something more ridiculous, he does.
And it was,
I don't know.
yeah.
I have to back off because there's no way my 76ers are going to make the finals.
Not right now,
being
no.
down 3-0. And I got to tell you, Brad Stevens is an amazing coach. Amazing.
I think
He's
he
one
might
of
be
the
the.
best coaches I've
Yeah.
seen.
I think he's the spawn of Bill Belichick, the other great coach from that area. Just,
Yeah, he actually coaches.
I know.
He draws up plays and they run the plays. I mean, I did not think the Celtics would be able to dominate the Sixers like this. The Sixers are making young team mistakes. There's no question about that. But they're more talented by far. They're just not playing well, and they're doing stupid things.
Right. And I know Gordon Hayward was out all year, so it's hard to say they're missing Gordon Hayward. But, I mean, your two presumable best players are Hayward and Irving, and they're out. Jaylen Brown missed game 1.
Well, Rozier's going to make some money, isn't he?
I think he's a restricted free agent. I'll be interested to see what they do pick-wise, or if they're able to, like, sign and trade him or something.
Well, they're either going to trade him or Kyrie, I think.
Yeah, I see it as a very sad prediction. As someone that's, you know, we've both been, obviously, Orlando Magic season ticket holders, and that debacle of a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I could see them signing Scary Terry to a huge contract, and then he having the, you know, Greg Popovich sort of effect, just like Brad Stevens does, where all of a sudden the guy that Brad Stevens was coaching isn't the guy you got.
Yeah, and and he doesn't have enough talent to play with to look like he's playing with now.
No.
But I like that team. I like that team with Marcus Smart in there and Rozier. I like that team a lot. The Cavaliers Celtics looks like it's going to be a hell of a match.
Exactly.
Just like we would have picked in the beginning of the year, right?
Yeah. For different reasons,
Wow.
but yeah. And I mean, at least, you know, the Celtics have 3 or 4 guys they can throw at LeBron. Now, nobody can stop LeBron.
No.
But between Jaylen Brown, Tatum, Semi Ojeleye, and I'm sure they got somebody else on that bench, and even Marcus Smart, you got guys you can put up on him that are at least going to give him a test, if you will.
Yeah.
And in the West, it looks like we're getting our Golden State.
About the West?
Well, we got Golden State, Houston. So,
Yep.
I think they're both going to win 4-1. I think both teams got their, obviously Golden State crushed New Orleans today. And the other game is...
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I like the New Orleans team. I think they fought, they played well.
And again, I don't know what we're going to
like
see
how they
moving forward. I don't know what we're going to get. But they were really starting to look good with DeMarcus Cousins before he went out. And he would put together him and, against these teams like the Rockets and the Warriors, the sort of a double-skilled big man like those two might have given them some real issues. And we may never know what that would have been because DeMarcus Cousins weighs 300 pounds and he's coming off a knee injury. It's going to keep him out at least half the season next season. So who knows if he makes it back. But I do want to discuss the superstar calls that we're seeing that James Harden seems to benefit from maybe more than anybody I've ever seen in my entire life. He travels.
And I want to know when you can walk on almost every play now, shuffle your feet or do whatever you want to do. I mean, I saw somebody get a rebound the other day, stumble 2 steps, and then make a pass.
Harden's signature move is he catches, takes 2 steps backwards, and then shoots a 3. Never dribbling once. Like, you can't do... I don't know. It's like when you're playing as a little kid and they just run around with a basketball and then they shoot. I mean, because they don't know the rules. Like,
I think the official's been atrocious.
Yeah. I mean,
I was watching the game last night again, and I couldn't believe some of the calls. And so when they showed the replay, I was watching where the ref was. The ref was like 8 feet away. I don't know.
I know, and
it's gotten really, really sloppy officiating. I know it's the hardest sport to officiate. I get that, but I just don't. It's just really bumming me out.
And I even get from a business standpoint, we'll go our business moment right now, that allowing your superstars to do a little bit more. Like maybe LeBron, what might be a reaching on somebody else isn't a reaching on LeBron. Maybe a block by Anthony Davis might be, an and one on another. They call the a charge instead of a block. But like Harden is, I think, a bad example of basketball for kids to watch. And he's going to be the MVP this year. And he travels.
No, I hate that move where he throws himself into somebody else, and he throws his arms underneath somebody else's arms
and flops
to initiate the contact. I hate that. I hate that move.
I mean, for the last 10 years, everybody has bemoaned every European player for playing that way, talking about how awful it is, how it's ruining the NBA game. And now Harden is, for whatever reason, being celebrated for doing it. That whole Rockets team does it. I don't know,
Yeah. No, I know.
That's what makes them hard to root for. It's not to say that, but it just feels like when your league MVP is traveling on every play and flops a lot, and constantly, it's hard to watch for me. I don't know.
So does Golden State beat Houston, or does Houston beat Golden State?
I just see Golden State crushing Houston. I think they've kind of been asleep at the wheel a little bit. I think they played in 3 consecutive finals. And I think they know their only speed bump was going to be the Houston Rockets, and I think they're ready to just unload on them. Assuming everybody stays healthy.
Interesting series. Capella's playing really well for Houston.
Right, but Draymond, and again, it's going to depend on how the refs call everything. If they let Houston flop their way to victory, and travel away, it's going to be tough, and how physical they let Draymond be, in the inside. But Houston has nobody to match up with Kevin Durant.
No.
And Harden still can't guard Steph, even though he tries a little bit harder on defense.
Yeah, it's going to be a good series, though. I'm going to be interested in watching that one.
Yeah, I'm interested in both. The presumed both final series. Assuming it is Cleveland. It's hard to imagine it's not Cleveland, Boston, Houston, Golden State. But those are the matchups I'd love to see.
Oh, I have a business moment.
All right.
I went to a charity auction this week, and I speculated and bought an Ohtani baseball.
Very nice.
I bought Ohtani and I bought Mike Trout, just because I like Mike Trout, but I speculate on the Ohtani baseball. I figure baseball from his rookie year, he's doing some pretty cool things. We'll see.
Yeah. Is Mike Trout the least famous superstar in any sport in the history of sports?
I think so. If you're in the East Coast, you're going to stay up till 10:30 to watch him bat one time. So,
I'm not a huge baseball person, so I don't watch a lot of baseball. I just when I'm with you and the Pirates are on, I watch the Pirates. That's about it. But I know that
I'm excited. I'm going to go see I'm going to go see the Yankees and the Angels on Friday and Sunday at the end of the month in New York. So I'm pretty excited. I get to see them twice.
Yeah.
And I love watching Mike Trout play. Mike Trout to me is a combination of Mickey Mantle and Bo Jackson. I've never seen anybody with the tools he has. And the no ego and the great personality.
Which is, again, crazy, because, again, I think if you asked, again, as a casual baseball fan, if you asked me to start naming baseball players, he should probably be the first guy I'd list. And I don't know if he'd be in the top 10 before I'd, if you asked me who were the best players of baseball and I sat down, if you were just like, name some baseball players, I'd be like, Mike Judge, I'd just go in that,
Yeah.
Aaron Judge, so not Mike Judge, is the writer of Office Space.
He's a stud.
Yeah.
All right, I want to switch away from sports. I want you to talk to our listeners about the amazing thing you've been doing with Chicago PD, because I just don't know anybody that's ever been on a TV show, and you're on twice. So talk about it. Let me know. Share it with our listeners.
Well, just like everything else, it comes with, I was in class for 4 nights a week. I have a master's degree in film and theater. And I've been acting for over a decade, and I finally, like most actors say, you get turned down constantly. I auditioned for one example, The Originals, that terrible CW show.
Mm-hmm.
I auditioned to be a werewolf. They kept calling me back to be a werewolf on the show 15 times over the course of 2 seasons. And anyone knows what I look like. I look
You're
like
a great werewolf.
I look a little bit like, if I was to be a mythical creature, you'd probably assume werewolf. I have the hair, the beard.
Yeah.
And no matter how, again, my agent thought all those auditions were great. Never got brought on. And this particular audition, I'm working in New Orleans on a TV show right now. And I almost I've turned down Dick Wolf shows a number of times this year just because of some personal tragedies and some other things that I haven't been able to do. So I was lucky that they gave me a shot. And this one I put in I didn't put in it's not that I didn't want the show. I definitely wanted it. But we're getting near the end of the season of the show I'm working on. And this was just like, all right, I'm going to do it. Didn't think too much about it. And that's the one that worked for whatever reason.
Yeah, maybe it's not overthinking. Maybe just going with the flow.
It could be. Because, again, and everyone always says it's the one you don't really... And, again, it's a weird way of putting it because you definitely want it. You wouldn't have auditioned if you didn't want to do it.
Right.
But it's the one that you weren't, on pins and needles for the next 3 days waiting to see if your agent called you back. It's the one you sent it in, moved on, went back to your other life, and didn't think about it.
And lo and behold.
I got to do a recurring role on Chicago PD. Now, granted, I'm a Nazi and a bad guy, but, what can you do? You have to take the roles that are offered.
That's right.
And it was a really fun experience. I mean, the one thing I do wish is I got to spend more time in Chicago because it seemed like a cool city. I didn't really get to see any of it.
Well, I was excited because it's one of my favorite TV shows, and I was excited when you told me that the people that you met there were good people.
Very good people.
And that really validates a lot of things for me because I love the show, but I like knowing that the people are good people.
Very good people. All, everyone's super friendly, very helpful. There was no egos, no attitude. Because I got to work with, I guess, two of the stars of the show, I would say, right? Would you? I mean,
Hank's the star.
Yeah, I worked with the lead,
and then Al's the second lead.
Yeah. So, and they were both, like I said, absolutely wonderful to work with, and very, then. So, if anybody watches Chicago PD, I'm on episode 521 and 520, the last 2 episodes of season 5, basically.
So it was last week, and then this Wednesday night is the last episode of the season. You're in that one as well.
Yes. And I had to do, for both episodes, the worst part of acting, if anybody wants to know, is ADR. And ADR is when you have to go to a studio, watch the scenes you've shot, and redo your lines exactly as they were on the screen. So you have to match up your attitude, your voice, and obviously your mouth, and how quickly or slowly you said everything. So
wow, it sounds really hard.
It's usually, it's never your full dialogue. They usually get, if you're shooting outside, it's one thing. If you're inside, it's usually pretty good. But almost every scene, there's going to be 1 or 2 lines where they just want it a little bit clearer, a little bit louder. So,
especially if somebody's choking you, right?
Especially if somebody's choking you, or you're getting your ass kicked by another guy, So yeah. Unrealistically,
so you get called Ross this week or not?
I think I get called Gibson.
Okay. Because I didn't think you got called anything in the last episode, but I saw your name was Ross Gibson.
Yeah. Which is an odd name, I think, for some sort of biker Nazi in prison. Ross Gibson, but,
Yeah, Ross wouldn't, yeah.
That's how
Gibson, maybe.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know about that one, but, that's cool. Yeah.
It's cool. So, everybody, if you want to have some fun, watch Chicago PD on NBC East Coast time, 10 p.m. on Wednesday night.
Or go back on Hulu and watch the previous episode as well.
That's right. And I think Jason's eyes looked menacing, and he was very Manson-esque to me, although he's a lot bigger than Manson, but I was scared. So,
which is good, because if you can scare your own parents, that means you probably did a pretty decent job.
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited. I'm going to have a great food moment this week. I'm going to have a great food moment tomorrow.
Oh.
We're driving to Hilton Head, and we're going to stop at Savannah, and we're going to go to Paula Deen's Lady and Sons, which is my favorite buffet restaurant in the world. And I will be having some Paula Deen fried chicken tomorrow about 2 o'clock, and I can't think of anything I would rather have. It is delicious. So that's my food moment in advance. I know it'll be great, though.
I technically did have a food moment today. It's one with a tiny bit of regret because it ended up making me take a huge nap. But I'm a big Alfredo person. And,
yeah, I love Alfredo.
There's a Cafe Fresca is a restaurant down here in New Orleans. And they make an incredible Alfredo. And it's incredibly rich, dense, thick, creamy, cheesy. They also give you basically 2 slices. Their garlic bread is almost like 2 slices of pizza covered in mozzarella. Just no sauce.
Wow.
To go along with the cheesy Alfredo. So needless to say, it was delicious, but I ended up taking like a 2.5-hour nap in the afternoon because...
Yeah, that stuff does weigh down on you.
It weighs down on you, yeah. And it's one of those, like, I'm still feeling a little bit lethargic even as we do this now. It's like, that was tough. It was delicious, but, there's a few moments of regret afterwards. But, And I'm going off sugar.
I want to call out Ben Roethlisberger.
Okay.
For dissing the Steelers drafting Mason Rudolph. And I'm going to call him out because he's the one that was whining about retiring and not playing and not doing all this, not doing all that. And, you know, he cries wolf all the time. I love Ben Roethlisberger when he's not talking. When he's playing football, I love him. When he's talking, I can't stand him. So I'm calling him out because he should realize that if anybody caused Mason Rudolph to be picked in the third round, he did.
Yeah. I think that's very fair. And I think, let's say he plays 3 more years. And let's say Rudolph has an awesome, preseason. Gets to play 1 or 2 games and looks good. Maybe he gets the Jimmy Garoppolo treatment and they move him on,
Yeah.
But I just think, along with Roethlisberger, crying wolf about, missing, whether he's retiring or not, he also has the fact that he has missed significant time almost every season. So
yeah, I mean, he's not indestructible. He gets hurt all the time. He plays hard, and he gets dinged up.
Right. And we've clearly seen that while he's not as awful as all the fans in Pittsburgh seem to think, that Landry Jones clearly isn't the answer.
If he's the answer, I don't want to hear the question.
I fell in love with Josh Dobbs in the draft process last year. I like the rocket scientist from Tennessee, with all this upside, but I don't think you spend a 4th-round pick on him last year and then move to a 3rd-round pick on Mason Rudolph this year if you think he's got any sort of talent whatsoever. So I'm sort of sad to see that. But, the Steelers clearly need to – you got to have – it's the NFL, and sadly people get hurt all the time. You need to have,
Yeah, you got to have backup.
And again, if the Steelers had him on their board, which, you can't really listen to what people say during or after the draft regardless. But they had him as a 1st-round draft pick. And if he's there in the 3rd round, the value's just too high to pass up, especially on that position. I do share a little bit of Roethlisberger's frustration, though, because technically you drafted one player that's probably going to play this year. And that's James Washington, who was only going to fill in for a guy you just traded during the draft. So, you didn't really improve on offense, I suppose.
You probably stayed pat.
Probably stayed pat.
Except this guy's going to be more reliable than Martavis Bryant.
I hope so.
And he'll learn the plays.
Exactly. But Martavis Bryant you do have to fear him when he's on the outside.
You did. So you don't think the Steelers' number 1 pick's going to play much?
I hope they prove me wrong. I mean, a lot of what I've read is that he's pretty raw.
Everything I've read, he was a reach in the 1st round.
I've read some, I read some more anonymous GMs. It sounds like half the league had him as a 1st-round pick, maybe even top 15. And other teams thought he was a 3rd or 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
But as we've learned in the draft, whether you're talking Antonio Brown, James Harrison, Tom Brady, Terrell Davis, the list goes on and on of players that were drafted, high that were terrible and low that were great. So, you can't really,
Yeah.
The one thing I did like during the draft is after the Washington pick, everybody at least had to acknowledge, well, the Steelers picked him, he's going to be a good receiver.
They always pick good receivers.
If they know something, it seems to be the receiver scout seems to know what he's doing. So
I just couldn't believe James Washington wasn't regarded like some of those other guys because I thought he's every bit as good as a guy from Alabama.
I think so.
But, it's what it is.
Well, they go, like I said, I'm excited. I can't wait to see him, Juju, and,
Yep. Oh, if I would have bet on the Kentucky Derby, I would have bet on the winner just because of the name of the horse.
It's a TV show we like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would have bet on it for that reason, even though he turned out to be the favorite and won anyhow. But any horse named Justify, I would have bet on just because of the TV show.
Yeah, I would have too. When I saw the list, I was like, well, that's who, I saw he was the favorite, but I read the names first. And I was like, well, you look for, I assume all gamblers do, you look for any sort of connection whatsoever.
Yeah. We don't know any of the other stuff, so we know what we know, right?
Exactly. Oh, one more minor food shout out real quick.
Okay.
I'm going back to my no sugars. Won't be having them again for a while. But at work, they brought in Whole Foods. They're called hand pies. They're basically Whole Foods homemade Pop-Tarts in their bakery.
Oh.
They're phenomenal. They're still packed with a ton of sugar, but they're absolutely delicious.
And what flavor did you have?
I had half of a cinnamon and half of a strawberry.
Okay.
And, they were...
That sounds stellar, though.
They were really, really good. And I mean, and again, much like the NFL draft, with food companies, you never really know what to believe, but according to the Whole Foods box, or the baker, they are, made from all natural ingredients, too. So, but they're delicious. Not quite as good as the ones at Four Rivers that they have so infrequently.
Those are really good, but they don't have them all the time.
No, but Whole Foods seems to have these now, and they're pretty awesome. So, just throwing that out there in the world for people to hear.
Okay. I finished McMafia last week.
Okay.
Definitely will watch season 2. It was really, really well done.
Okay.
Enjoyed that. I'm going to finish my season 4 of Bosch this week on Amazon Prime. I think it's already surprised me. It's really well done. It's so much better than anything you see on TV. God, I just can't believe it. Really good. I really enjoyed it. And I'm reading my Caddyshack book, which is hilarious. And there's so many. If you like the movie Caddyshack, you'll be shocked at all the things that went on. It's hard to believe that movie ever was made.
Well, I'm going to start my Wire book this week that you got me.
Okay, yeah, I thought you'd like that.
And then I may have just been in the right mood for it, but I watched the studio R-rated comedy Game Night last night with Jason Bateman and Rachel McAdams. And I really liked it. It's only an hour and 40 minutes, so there's no fluff, no waste, and it was pretty funny. I mean, it flowed pretty well. It was good. I really liked it. I mean,
okay.
I think I'd watch it again.
Because I want to see that.
Because I think we bemoan comedies coming out of the studio. When we were talking about Caddyshack, how that was sort of time. Like, this has that sort of... There's nothing in this... There's no references, I mean, there's references to, like, classic games like charades and things, but there's nothing, I think it'll hold...
I saw the previews, and I thought, wow, I'll go see that one.
Yeah, and I would say... Good. I'd recommend it. I think it's worth seeing.
Hey, did you go see the scary one yet?
Which scary one are we talking about?
The one about being quiet.
No, I have not.
Quiet Place.
No. I did listen to a podcast. It's called Still Processing with Wesley Morris from the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to hear I don't know. I mean, maybe it's the real... It's a very interesting theory about that movie. Because I think you know what the movie's about without actually being spoiled, Yeah. The family has to stay quiet or they get killed.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. And Wesley Morris sort of surmised that it's an allegory for white people and African Americans and white people feeling they have no voice in America anymore. And this was their fear coming out. I thought that was a little bit of a stretch. It might just be a movie about trying to be quiet, but...
Yeah, I'm gonna go into it thinking it's a movie about trying to be quiet. I don't think I need to give it any social allegory.
Yeah. Well, I just thought about, the inspiration for that movie could have been as simple as, you come home late at night and you're trying to be quiet and it's so hard. And you're trying to come up with a new spin on the horror genre and that's what you come up with. It doesn't have to be...
Yeah.
I mean, if a janitor leaves, let's say, a speck of dust in the middle of the floor, it doesn't mean it's a symbol for his isolation in this world and how he feels alone and has nobody. It could just be he missed a spot on the floor. Not everything is super duper meaning. Sometimes it's just what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I did think that was an interesting take, at the very least. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I'll wait till that comes out on DVD or Blu-ray or iTunes or Apple or something before I watch that one.
All right, I guess we'll sign out.
Yeah. So until next week, subscribe, tell your friends. Please rate us on iTunes. We could really use some ratings. It helps us become more visible the more ratings we get, and we have very few ratings. We really appreciate everybody listening, but if you can just go quick to iTunes and give us the 5 stars, it'd be fantastic. And Patreon really does...
I'm going to give us a shout out on Twitter right now.
And Patreon really does help us keep the lights on, as they say. It does cost,
yes.
Believe it or not, it does cost money to get the podcast produced and put it out and all those sort of things. So it really does help. And so until next week, thank you.
We enjoy doing this, but we need some support.
Till next week.